Hello everyone, welcome to Tech Talk series. Today we are going to look at the basic concepts of AngularJS.
Okay, let's start. These are the contents that I am hoping to cover through this tutorial. First, will give you an introduction about what is AngularJS. Next, I will show you how you can write your own applications with AngularJS. Later, we will look into some basic topics related with Angular, such as expressions, directives, filters, tables, controllers, and modules. Finally, we will look into some more concepts related with Angular directives. Okay, let's move. So let's first look at what is AngularJS. AngularJS is a JavaScript framework, or we can say that it is a client-side framework. We can use it to create dynamic web applications. And also AngularJS is open source. You can download AngularJS from these two links. You can download it either from the direct link or it is also available in GitHub. And when we are using AngularJS within our applications, we have to mention the location of it under a script tag, as shown in here. So I will show you how to do this when we are writing AngularJS applications. So when we consider the design pattern of Angular framework, it contains the MVC pattern. MVC stands for Model, View and Controller. View contains the user interface part of the application, or how the data is going to present it to the user. Controller manages the behavior of the application, or it can update or modify models and views. Model contains the data or data classes within the application. So these models and controllers are written in JavaScript and the view is in simple HTML. AngularJS contains a special set of directives. Each of these directives begins with the two letters ng. So I have mentioned here some of these directives. We can use these directives when we are writing our own applications. I will show you how we can use this. So let's see how we can write our own application with Angular framework. Basically, you have to do two things. First, you have to include the location of AngularJS under a script tag. And then you have to define your AngularJS applications by using the special Angular directive called ngapp. So let's see how we can do this. Let's create a project with Visual Studio. I am going to create an empty web application with Visual Studio and I will name it as Angular Tutorial. Okay, the project is created. Okay, let's create an index page. This page will act as the view. I will name this as index.html. So our index page is created. Then I will give the title as Angular Tutorial. So to make this application Angular one, we have to add the script tag. And within this script tag, we have to enter the AngularJS location. And also, we have to initialize the AngularJS application. To do that, I have to include ngapp directive. And that's it. Okay, before do some further coding, let's look at some basic concepts of Angular. So the first concept that we are going to look at is Angular expressions. Normally Angular expressions are written within double braces. You can provide a variable or a statement or array location or whatever thing within double braces and Angular will treat it as an expression. So within the runtime, Angular executes what is the content or what is the result of this expression and it will show you the output through HTML. This is called dynamic binding. So let's see how we can do this practically. Okay, let's modify our index page. So I am going to enter some text here. Angular homepage. Then I am going to give the expression. Within the double braces I can give the expression. Okay, our expression is 5 plus 5. I have given this within the double braces. So let's save and run this, and let's see what will be the output. So this is our output. This is the text and we gave h1 tag Angular homepage. So it have executed the content and expression 5 plus 5 and give it as 10 here. So what we gave on the expression is 5 plus 5 as in this way. In the output it shows as 10. So what it did was it execute the statement and directly show the output within the HTML. Talked about Angular expressions. So let's talk about another important topic on Angular, which is Angular directives. So these are the main directives that we are going to use under Angular. These are ng-app, ng-init, ng-model and ng-repeat. I already showed you the directive called ng-app, and we used it to initialize Angular application, and we put it under HTML tag to initialize or start our application. But always we don't have to put it under HTML tag. We can put it with body or div tag, but it has to wrap the content or a section that we are going to use Angular. And ng-init also another important Angular directive. We can use it to define initial values for variables. So normally when we are doing coding, we initialize our variables or arrays before writing our application. So for that purpose we can use ng-init. So let's see how we can do this. Let's modify our index page. So I am going to put ng-init tag with body tag. So you can see here there are green lines under ng-init and ng-app. So the reason is this is HTML5 and ng-app or ng-init is not a valid attribute for HTML5. So we can prevent these green lines by adding the text data inside this directory. Okay, now the green lines disappeared. So within this ng-init tag I can initialize the variables. So I am going to initialize two variables here. Number of books, which is equal to 10, and unit price, which is equal to 100. I have to separate the variables with a semicolon. So I'm further modifying this page. So I'm going to calculate the total price for the books now. So I have to put the expression within the double braces. Okay, in the first time I put two numbers within the expression, and this time I put the names of two variables here, number of books and unit price, and I have initialized those variables under ng-init tag. So let's save and see what will be the output. Okay, here is our output. There is the text we given under h2 tag ng-init example, and it has calculated the total price by multiplying the number of books into unit price. here we gave number of books equal to 10 and unit price is 100. So, and within the expression I gave to multiply those two variables, so it showed me the output as 1000. Total price is 1000. So that's about ng init tag. Okay, we talked about two directives which are ng app and ng init. So let's move on to our next Angular directive. It is ng model. So this is a very important and commonly used Angular directive. Basically, we are using this directive with HTML inputs such as text boxes, checkboxes and other things. So this directive can get the value or content of an HTML element and prints it to the view. So let's see how we can do this. So I am going to modify our index page again. So I can put an h2 tag here. Next, as an example, I will initialize a text box. Type equals text, and I will give the ID as name, and then I am going to use the Angular directive which is ng model. Again, to prevent these green lines, can use data, but it is not a very big problem. And under ng model, I am going to give some name here. Then I am going to put the Angular expression as name. So the content or the value within the text box is going to dynamically bind into this place through ng model directive. So let's save and see what will happen. So here it comes the text box. So when I type my name here, it dynamically bind the value within the text box into this place. So whatever the content I type within the text box, it automatically binds the content into this place. So this is the task or the purpose of ng model tag. Okay, let's look into some more Angular directives. Okay, we talked about the first three directives. So let's look at the final directive. It is ng repeat. So most of the times ng repeat is used to display the contents within an array or some collection. So we can repeat the contents within an array using this directive. Most of the times we are using this ng repeat directive with Angular tables. So let's look at some examples. So I'm going to edit this index page again to show you an example of ng repeat. So for the clearance, I am removing these variables and this content. So this time under ng init tag, I am going to initialize an array. So I can use ng repeat to repeat the content within that array. So I'm going to name my array as books. So this is my array. So this array is a collection of JSON objects. So I'm going to create two JSON objects within my array. Each JSON object contains two properties, name and author. So one JSON object is written within braces, and I can separate JSON objects through a comma. So now I am going to give the values. The name of my first book is amba yahaluwo. And the author of my first book is T.V. Langra. So I gave two properties for one JSON object, name and author. I gave the values for those two properties. I gave those values within single quotations, as you can see, and I have separated those two properties using a comma. So this is the way that we can initialize a JSON object within an array. So in the similar way, I am going to initialize my second JSON object also. The name of my second book is Harry Potter. And the author is J.K. Rowling. Okay, I initialize the array called books. So now I can show you how you can repeat the content within this array using ng-repeat. So I'm going to define a table in this way, and within this table tag I'm going to put ng-repeat. So again, to remove this green line, you can put data. So within the ng-repeat tag, you can show. So this is the name of my array, books, and this content should be equal to the name of the array, and this is the thing which I going to use inside the table to repeat the content within the array. So this can be any name. For this moment I use this name as book. So I can initialize a row and a cell as this. As the content of this cell, I'm going to define an expression, book.name. To access the property called name within a book, I use this expression. So as the next cell, I can put book.author. So that's it. So this is the content within our ng-repeat tag. So it is going to repeat the content within this array using table rows. So let's run the application and see the output. As you can see, it is show the name of the book and then the author as shown in here. So this is not properly formatted, but as you can see, there is a name of the book and the author name as in two rows. So I'm going to modify the code to get a better look for our table. So I'm going to put column headings. The first column heading is name, and the next one is author, and also I'm going to further modify our table. And I will put this content inside our T body, and I'm going to put this ng-repeat tag within the T body, because at first we don't have column headings. Now we have column headings. So then the ng repeat tag should be included within the table body. So let's save and see what will be the output. So this is our output. So you can see the column headings, name and author. So we can further modify this, such as by putting attributes like cell spacing and cell padding. So from this way we can repeat the content of an array using ng repeat. Talked about Angular directives. So let's move to the next major topic under Angular, which is Angular controllers. So at the beginning of this tutorial, I told that Angular framework contains the MVC pattern and the C stands for controller. So controller manages the behavior of the application, and we use the directive called ng controller to define the controller within an application. And also normally the controller contains a special object called scope. And to define a controller in a proper way, we can use Angular modules. And all application controllers should belong to module, and module can make your application more readable. So I am going to show you an example of using Angular controllers. So to make the page clear, I am going to remove these variables. And also I am going to remove this table. So first I have to define and control. So to do this, I am going to open a new script tab. So within this script tab, I am going to define my controller. So before defining a controller, I am going to define an Angular module. Without Angular modules also you can write Angular controllers, but the better way of writing Angular controllers is writing them using Angular modules. So first I am going to define an Angular module. I can define it as this way. Var some variable name is equal to angular.module. So as the parameters, I have to give module name, and then I have to give if there is any dependent modules. So for this example, there is no any dependent modules. If there is any dependent modules, we have to include those within this array. So this is an Angular module. So from this module, I can define my Angular controller. I can define this as app is the name of this variable. So I can define app.controller and my controller name. And then I have to define the function. And as the second parameter, I gave a function. So inside this function, there is a scope object. So the scope object is going to share between the view and the controller. So in previous examples, I defined variables using ng-init directive, but the better way of defining variables is using controllers rather than using ng-init. So I can define my variables using scope dot, and with each time when you are going to define variables, you have to define them using scope object if you are going to share those variables in between controller and view. So I'm going to define of books as 10, then the next variable is unit price. as 100. And I'm going to define another variable called total, which is equal to the multiplication of the above two variables. Okay, this is a simple controller, and we are going to share these three variables within the controller and the view using scope object. Before that, we have to include the name of this Angular module inside this ngl. In previously there are no modules, and so there we kept ngapp as empty, but there is an Angular module now, so we have to define it under ngapp. So this name should be given under ngapp. After that, we have to give the name of the controller with the section that we are going to use it. So I can define the controller using ngController and the name of my controller, which is app control. We have to give this name inside this, as in this way, and then you have to enter data tag to avoid the green line. So here I can modify the view. You can say number of books is, and then I can put my expression as num of books. So when we are defining the variables within the controller, I put scope.number of books. So when I am calling to this variable inside the view, I just call it as num of books. So within the view, we are not going to use the term scope. So this number of books variable will be shared within this view as well as this controller. I am going to further modify this as in this way. Unit price is going to some another expression, so it should be unit price, which is the variable I defined here. Next I am going to show the total. Total is I called my last variable also. So that's it. So let's save this application and run to see the output. So as you can see here, it shows the number of books is 10, unit price is 100, and total is 1000. So I define these three variables, which are total, number of books, and unit price, using control within the controller, and they are dynamically binding into the view. So that is a brief introduction about Angular controllers. Rather than defining the controller within the script tag within the same page, you can add this code under a different JavaScript file within this folder structure and call it using a script tag also. Okay, let's move to the next topic of our tutorial. It is about Angular filters. So basically Angular filters are using to transform data or to change the data format, and we can put a filter using a pipe character. And some major examples of filters are currency, order by, lowercase and uppercase. So let's see some examples. So I am going to modify this page. We can easily add and filter using a pipe sign into an expression. So I add the pipe sign and I can easily put a filter currency. So what this filter do is it can format the unit price as a currency. So I can do the same for the total also. Let's save and run the application. So as you can see, before it just displayed as 100, but now it display as currency. It show as $100 rather than just showing 100. So for total is also same. Now it is shown as $1,000 rather than showing 1000. So it is an example of using currency filter. So we are going to look at some more examples of using filters. So I can define some other variable. I can define a variable as this way, scope.name, and I can initialize this as this way. So within my view, I can put it as name. I call to the variable which I defined within the controller, and after this I am going to put a filter which is uppercase. What this filter does is it's going to format the name variable into a uppercase. So let's save and run the application. So it display my name with uppercase letters. So I initialize the variable as this way, and now it displays my name as using uppercase letters. So this was displayed using the filter called uppercase. I can format the name variable in a similar way, also using lowercase. So when I run this, I can see the output as this. So then in here all the letters are lowercase letters. Autobuy is another popular Angular filter type. So let's see how we can use it. So I'm going to define an Angular array within my scope. So I'm going to name it as books. So in previous time I defined this array using ng-init. In this time I'm going to define this within our controller. I'm going to give the same details in the previous array. Okay, this is my array. So as in previous time I can write the HTML. So this is the same HTML code that I used before. So this is my ng repeat tag, and I will going to print the details of each book within the books array. So let's see what is the output. So this is my output. So let's see how we can use order by with this. To use order by, first I have to define the pipe sign. Then I'm going to say order by colon, and I will give it as name. So it is going to order the rows by using this order by tag, and it will order the rows using name property. So as you can see here, now Umbrella row comes before Harry Potter because it is ordered using the alphabetical order. So this is how we can use order by as an Angular filter type. So we have come to the end of this tutorial. So as the last part, we are going to look at some more Angular directives. So these directives are ng-show, ng-hide and ng-click. So when we consider ng-show, it can show some section of HTML when some specific condition is true, and ng-hide when it can hide some content when some specific condition is true, and when we consider ng-click, it can perform a task on a button click. So let's look at some example. Okay, first I'm going to remove this content to make this clear. So I will remove this content, and also I'm going to remove the content in the controller. Okay, so let's modify our view. I'm going to put some value inside div tag. So I'm going to make this visible when only the variable called first is true. So to do this, I can put the Angular directory called ng-show as this way, and I can put the name of the variable like this. So this content will be only shown when the first variable is true. So for that, I have to define the first variable within my controller. So I will set it as false initial. Okay, let's save and run our application. And this is the output that we are going to see. The content under the div tag is not shown here because the value of the first variable is false. This is only shown when the first variable is true. So if we make this true, then that section will be shown as in this way. So assume that I want to show this content on a button click. So to do this, I'm going to define a button and when click on this button, I want to show the above content. So when click on this button, I'm going to call for another function. So I have to define the function called show within my controller. I can define it as in this way: scope.show is equal to a function, and what I want to do is when someone click on this button, I want to show this content. To show this content, I have to make the variable called first into true. So initially this should be false. So within this function this should be true. So when someone click on this button only, this variable become true and this content will be shown. So let's save and run our application. So initially there is a button show content. So when I click on this button, this content is shown. ng hide is also a similar thing. So instead of ng show we have to include ng hide. So it is also when some variable is true, it is similarly going to hide the content instead of show. It is also same like ng show.
That's all we hope to cover through this tutorial. So if you have any questions or clarifications, please contact us through our .edu page. Thank you.